We begin with one of the worst industrial tragedies in U.S. history. It happened 54 years ago this month in the tiny town of Woodbine. 29 plant workers lost their lives in the THIOKOL chemical explosion. The story made national headlines, yet today few people are aware of the devastation it caused and the fallout in its wake. Tonight, we revisit what happened on that fateful day and what's being done to make sure the victims are never forgotten. By looking at their faces, you'd never know the trauma that Henrietta Lee, Hattie Jackson, and Emma Gibbs have had to endure. Their eyes tell the story that their lips dare not.
It was a lot to get over. A lot of us hadn't gotten over it yet.
For 54 years, they've burdened the pain of what happened on February 3rd, 1971.
We have never seen a disaster like that in our lives.
They are three of the survivors of one of the worst industrial explosions in our nation's history. It happened at the THIOKOL chemical plant in the rural southeast Georgia town of Woodbine in Camden County, where munitions were made for soldiers serving in the Vietnam War.
I was one of the first set of women that went there, because I finished school in '69, and I got on there at the end of '69. Good paying job back then.
THIOKOL was, to us,
Yes.
yeah,
Sure was. It was.
You had insurance, you know,
Right.
Right. You had your life, you got life insurance, your medical. So it was truly.
It was good.
We thought it was God sent, and it was, but we didn't know
No.
what we was working with.
Yeah.
And THIOKOL did not know what we was working with.
They were making trip flares for the Vietnam War, and the materials weren't being stored properly. But the people who worked there didn't know that they were being stored improperly because the United States Army had classified them as a Class 2 flammable, but it turned out later on that we found out these chemicals were actually a Class 7, which is highly explosive. So these workers were in a lot more danger than they knew.
Patrick Longstreth is a local filmmaker. After he and his wife Ann learned about the tragedy in Woodbine, they spent 3 years researching, interviewing victims, families, county officials, and emergency crews.
I first became aware of it from a news report in The Current, which is a local investigative news source, and it was an article by Laura Corley, who went to the 50th anniversary commemoration and just did some great interviews and gave a great summary of everything that had happened. It left a strong impression on me.
In 2024, they released a documentary, now streaming on PBS Real South.
We call it the day that shook Georgia because the explosion could be felt 50 miles away.
A flame in a small building, M132, triggered that massive explosion. At the time, the facility was composed of more than 35 buildings that stretched 7,400 acres. Within minutes, 80 workers evacuated.
Every day we used to have a fire. And they tell us to run outside. The men come in with the fire extinguisher and put the fire out. So that day, I guess everybody thought it was the same thing, just a regular fire, which it wasn't. And the place just blew up.
The results were devastating. 24 people were killed on site or immediately after. 5 later died. At least 50 to 100 others suffered catastrophic injuries. Henrietta lost her sister Gracie.
I saw someone over there burning. I saw a body covered in ashes. And I was telling the people that was in the van with us, I said, help them, help them. Their body is smoking. They have ashes all over the body. And so when they got me to the hospital, days later, a week later, at Duval Medical Center, that's where I was, in the burn, had all of us in a ward together. And they told me later that the person that I saw with the body had done turned in a fetal position and was smoking with ashes on it was my sister. And she was standing right beside me when it happened.
Hattie lost family members as well, including cousins, a sister-in-law, and her brother Charles.
Charles had only worked for THIOKOL for 7 days. Never drawed a paycheck. He was 20 years old, never had a family or wife or children.
The fallout was unimaginable.
There was a terrible day. And the next week they called me, asked me did I want to come back to help clean up. No, not right now.
Still traumatized, injured, and grieving, employees were threatened to come back to work or face termination.
I had 4 kids, and so I went back and take care of them.
Hattie also returned, but for only 1 week. Henrietta did not.
I just couldn't take it. I couldn't take it. I meant, like, I don't think I've been down there since that happened.
In the weeks and months that followed, some of the victims and their families filed a lawsuit, which turned into a 17-year battle with the government. 6 opted out. They were never compensated. The victims and their families soon became casualties of the chaos. Stay with us as WSAV honors Black history. What happened in Woodbine continues with an effort to get the victims the respect and recognition they deserve by sharing their story with the masses. Welcome back. The year was 1971. Jimmy Carter had just stepped into office as governor of Georgia, and life was simple for the folks who worked and resided in the rural southeast community of Woodbine in Camden County. But on Wednesday, February 3rd at 10:53 a.m., the unimaginable happened. What transpired in that small town stayed dormant for decades until the daughter of one of the survivors decided to document its history and put it on display for the world to see. Here's part 2 of our story.
Plant blew up at 10:53, 11:30, burned in and had 3 units coming to Kingsland.
Janie Everett is the founder, CEO, and executive director of the THIOKOL Memorial Project, a local nonprofit established to honor those she calls the patriots and heroes of the 1971 explosion and rescue efforts.
These people deserve our admiration, our gratitude.
In 2017, with the help of volunteers, she set up a one-room museum in Kingsland, about 10 miles south of Woodbine.
This is his wallet, his union pen.
Every inch filled with artifacts, documents, memorabilia, and photographs, chronicling the explosion while paying homage to the victims of the tragedy. Her mother, Lucille Washington Everett, was one of them.
She had dirt on her face, she had burns on her face, on her wrists, you know, her clothing and stuff were soiled. So I knew that my mother was alive.
Janie was just 17 when the day turned gray.
The birds wouldn't even eat that day. The rain was coming down like tears from heaven.
That afternoon, Governor Jimmy Carter came to THIOKOL to survey the damage.
When this explosion happened, it left some of the children without parents, either deceased or parents injured.
There was national coverage in newspapers, magazines, even television broadcasts. but the attention was short-lived. The year after the explosion, Janie graduated high school and left Woodbine to join the Army, ultimately making a career at the Department of Homeland Security and the Department of Energy in Washington, D.C. She returned to her hometown decades later for another mission, to make sure history isn't forgotten.
And these people are the people that led America to our modern time today. Their workplace ethics is a blueprint that we live by now. And it was because of them that SPR was done away at the hospital. We had 19 rooms, 2 beds to a room, but only 6 rooms could be occupied by people of color. That went away when this explosion happened. Jacksonville stood up 5 hospitals. Savannah stood up 5 hospitals. Brunswick activated, Fernandina, Folkestone, even Charleston, the Muse. That's the place where Bertha Hill died. So you had all of these people coming together, all of the fire departments.
More than 600 people from 16 municipalities, along with the U.S. Navy, Air Force, and Coast Guard, responded to the emergency. A few months after the explosion, OSHA, the Occupational Safety and Health Administration, which was already in the works, was established. The 17-year lawsuit that followed was also pivotal in the mass tort litigation against the federal government.
This case, Flossie Marie Massey versus the United States of America, is famous. That's the case where you valued human life. The mass tort litigation under the Justice Department was actually rewritten, and this formula for age versus hourly rate versus calculating out to 30 years or your work lifespan is the same formula that was used for 9/11.
The nearly 60 plaintiffs in the suit asked for more than $717 million in compensation. They received less than $20 million. 25% of that went to their attorneys. Details of the case revealed that it was the U.S. Army's negligence that led to their demise.
And these people, their labor, the labor of their hands, helped liberate what is now, about 96 million people in South Vietnam, and saved thousands of service members' lives. So they made a contribution to humanity. So where is the humanity when we have 6 families that was never compensated for deaths that our government know that they caused? A lot of people, they quietly grieve and they miss these people. They loved them. They were family. And for the government to come and say they were women, they were poor, they were unskilled. How can you be unskilled with 56,322 trip flares resting in the storeroom? Not to mention 3 arsenals that have been already supplied with this stuff. So they tried to minimize or disgrace them or say things that made them seem like they didn't matter. And that was painful.
54 years later, Janie is trying to help her community heal. Her goal, to right the wrongs of the past by leaving a legacy of hope for the future. She's currently working to have the White House honor those who perished with the Congressional Gold Medal. Her vision is to also have a national park that will serve as a living memorial to those who lost their lives and their place in history. THIOKOL eventually sold the plant in Woodbine, turning its focus to the U.S. space program. The company made solid rocket boosters that caused the Challenger space shuttle disaster, killing 7 astronauts on January 28, 1986, 15 years after Woodbine. In 2019, the state legislature designated Georgia Interstate 95 Exit 7 in honor of the fallen patriots of THIOKOL, a road once traveled by the workers to and from the plant. It honors the 29 people killed on February 3, 1971, and a 30th victim, Joseph Wainwright, who lost his life 2 years later while manufacturing a missile in support of the Vietnam War. Well, Well, this year, 3 women were remembered during the annual commemoration. Trip flare manufacturers Lucille Washington and Leonie Ferguson and nurse Rosella Causer, who treated the injured at Gilman Hospital in St. Mary's. To sign the petition to help get these heroes the Congressional Gold Medal, go to our website, wsav.com/honoring Black History.